Episode 5 of the Royal Round, joined as always, or most often, by Marty Biron, Dan Dunleavy, and Rob Ray. And we have a significant Hollywood celebrity joining us on the show today, Nick Bakay, actor, writer, comedian, producer, and an awful lot more. Not to mention he's from Buffalo. Marty, when we think of Hollywood, who have you encountered over the years?
I got to meet some really good Hollywood-esque personality when I played for the Rangers. So Michael J. Fox one year, Cuba Gooding Jr. But the most fun interaction I had with one of them was Eric Stone Street. In the finals between the Rangers and the Kings, we were going back to New York, and in the airport, he came up to me and he says, "Hey, I hear you're throwing a party in New York, and you put me on the list." I'm like, "I'm throwing a party in New York, and you need to be on the list?" Like, what doesn't make sense out of this? He's the celebrity. But somehow that party never happened. Eric Stone Street was not on the list, and he probably doesn't even remember that it happened.
Dan?
It's not a Hollywood celebrity, but years ago we broadcast the Vancouver Olympic Games opening, and Howard Berger, another reporter, and I, we wound up somehow leaving BC Place Stadium. And to exit the stadium, you have to go through one specific door. But we wound up in the green room where everybody from the opening ceremonies was in that room, including Sarah McLachlan, who's not a Hollywood celebrity. But I did get tongue-tied, and I told Howard we weren't leaving the room until I had the guts to go say hello to her. So it took about 40 minutes, and I did say hi.
I thought you were going to say 4 hours. I would have, cashed in on the open bar in the green room. Razor?
Well, I don't hang in those circles, so I really don't have these stories. But when you mentioned Michael J. Fox, we did play with him in a celebrity hockey game at the arena one time a few years back. So I did get a chance to meet with him. And I did one time, we were in Vegas, see Celine Dion walk past me. And we were like, no way, that was it. So was that kind of meeting it? That's close enough. That's as close as I get, sure, man.
Did she make eye contact
the people I
with
hang
you,
around
Razor?
with, we really don't float in those worlds. We just kind of stick to ourselves.
NHL All-Star Game for me in Atlanta. Alyssa Milano guesting with me on set for about 10 minutes. Probably the highlight of my career.
I've heard stories.
Yes, you have. Nick Bakay stories coming up. Buffalo-born Nick Bakay is with us. Nick, great to see you. When was the last time you had a significant connection with Buffalo? When you were back home or talking with anybody back home?
Holy cow. Well, I got friends back home. Mark Supples is probably the most infamous of my old pals. Mark and I played high school football together when I've just stayed close with him ever since, and Mother's was always my watering hole after the classic years of the original Pink Flamingo. So I got pals back there. I don't have family there anymore, so I don't get back that often. The last time I was there was for the AAA All-Star Game, which is quite a while ago now.
Yeah, Nick, who was your favorite Sabre? Like, I know Razor's on the screen, so you may want to say his name, but if you had to pick somebody that's not on this call right now, who is your favorite Sabres watching growing up?
Well, I go back to the old dawn of the Sabres. I'm old, and I have, not in this room or I would show it, I've got an orange seat from the Odd, autographed by the French Connection. So obviously I'm that era. And when you're young, that age, those are your heroes. I'll tell you who my favorite Sabre was back in that day was I like Jerry Korab. I was a big Korab guy. But, if you're played for the Sabres, it's safe to assume I love you.
I guess I want to know, being a writer, what kind of character have you possibly or could build around Razor then? Because you're a fan. He thinks he's fun. He thinks he's funny every broadcast.
A hilarious superhero. That's what it would be.
I'll tell you, I actually I have a movie idea I've been playing with forever, and it's completely Razor centric, and it's basically about some complete prima donna superstar who has to go and track down the guy who kept him safe all those years. And the superstar's life is on the typical trajectory of fame, but empty, recently divorced, his life's a mess. But his enforcer, his bodyguard, has had a much rougher ride, and he's got to go through all sorts of strange things to track him down and bring him back into the world. But I've always thought this, the enforcer relationship, it's, Rob played that role. I had a few dealings with Marty McSorley, who's a wonderful guy, and just
Yep.
it's that McSorley-Gretzky relationship fascinating to me. And I always feel like in a city like Buffalo, those are the two most popular players, right? The badass and whoever's pouring the most goals in the net. And it's, to me as a writer, a perfect launching point for a love story, if I may.
You know, I got nothing going on right now, Nick. Give me a call. I'll come out. We can make this happen.
I would love that.
I know you like to kind of add Buffalo into scenarios when you're writing in that. It's got to be hard to find something here because nothing ever goes on around here.
You know, but it's easy because the people are real, unlike where I am. You know, if I ever want to find a character with any heart, I'm not going to find someone I met here in LA, right? It's going to be somebody from Buffalo, somebody, you know, somebody real, down and dirty. But, you know, I loved growing up there so much. I always have been very sensitive to the Buffalo jokes, you know, because I think that if you know Buffalo, you love Buffalo. Yeah, man, I work it in whenever I can, you know. So, you know, we'll see. If we ever get back to work, I'll see what I can do about working Buffalo into scripts and stuff.
This enforcer that you want to write in, might that person be politically incorrect?
Well, you know, not during the pitch, because I'd have to pitch it out here, wouldn't I? You know, but when I'm writing it, hell yeah, right? No, listen, I'm right there. That wouldn't be hard for me to channel. I have to be so careful. I'm in these writing rooms, which traditionally have been like locker rooms, a place where there is no joke that's inappropriate, no joke that's too soon off tragedies, you name it. It's a great rough, if you don't have a thick skin, get out of the kitchen world. And now I run a show, and I have to be really careful about who I hire because, you know, I don't want people running out of the writer's room in tears. And half the time I don't know what I just did. So, you know, I think that I can represent that point of view real easy.
You know, Nick, every game day I have the same problem. When we meet about the game that night, what we're going to talk about, Marty and Duff are those two guys that I've got to walk a fine line with because I just really don't want to get under their skin.
Are they a little sensitive?
Yeah, very sensitive.
Mm-hmm. They're tender.
Very delicate people.
Well, they're the flowers of their generation, Rob. They don't get far without guys like you and me, but you look,
no,
you know, it's what makes us all dimensional.
Just
Razor, it's because we're younger than you. That's what happened, Razor. You're the old guy in the room, Razor, so we don't want to offend you either. But, you know, we're going to talk about pranks a little later in the show, and you talk about joking with the guys. So what are some type of pranks that you guys can play on set and trying to get everybody loose and have fun?
You know, it's a good question. It's not like, you know, you can't do full-bore pranks with actors because that's, you know, you want to talk about tender flowers, you know, but what I will do sometimes just I will cut the tension with something wildly inappropriate. If I know the performer is nervous I've done this with people I've helped if they're going on talk shows and they're a little nervous about their shot. I've done it when people are getting ready for big scenes or just anything where you can tell they're squeezing the bat a little hard, you know. I think the best way to knock that out of them is to say something wildly inappropriate because it's just a shock to the senses. It'll get a laugh, an involuntary laugh, and then they're loose, you know. It's that kind of a thing. I think it's like when, you know, when players talk about it, they feel like they're themselves after that first hit, right? It's like you need a little jarring shock to the senses, and then, you know, you go about your business.
Well, you mentioned the business. I mean, what's it like for you right now?
It's mystery. It's absolute mystery. We are naturally on our calendar hiatus from the show Mom that I run. So it's kind of business as usual. The question is we have no idea when we're back, how we're back. Every week I get a conference call from Warner Brothers with new guesstimates of when and how, and they keep changing so much. I don't know what it's going to be. You know, I think everyone is really, before there's any kind of testing available, I think everyone is really trying to err on the side of caution. On the other hand, we're like everyone else. And, you know, we had to call our season off with 2 episodes to go. And I was fighting hard to push through, mainly because I can't stand the idea of my crew losing 2 checks. There are a lot of people who need this work. And so we're all trying to figure it out. And right now it's way above my pay grade, wherever they're sorting these things out. But, at some point the wheels got to get turning again. It just will. And, people need to laugh right now too. So I believe what we're doing is, on some level, it's not essential, but it doesn't hurt.
I tell you what, I think it's essential. I watch that show all the time. It's my new favorite comedy that's out there.
Great to hear.
I don't watch a lot of comedies on TV, but quite honestly, my wife and I watch that show all the time. I think it's fantastic. I'll be honest, I didn't realize that was your show until you mentioned it. So I kind of like coming into the interview blind here. You do a great job with that one.
I appreciate it very much. It's funny. It's, I'm always happy to be working. But I'm pretty straight up about when I'm working on something that I'm proud of and when I'm working on something that I'm simply grateful for, and this one's been great. And then people are nice. Our actors are wonderful. So it's been a great experience. I'm really glad you're enjoying it.
We're in a pretty competitive business ourselves with the game. Yours has got to be the same way out there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and we're a broadcast network show, right? That is starting to feel like the past. Everybody's watching everything on their phone, everything's streaming. I also work on a Netflix show called The Kaminsky Method with Michael Douglas and Alan Arkin, and it's been fascinating to compare the two. But it's really competitive. I mean, there's a lot of demand for material now, which is great, but the working situations vary greatly. If you do a Netflix show, you might do 8 episodes. If you do a network show, you're looking at 22. Big difference in every regard. But yeah, it's the same drill. There are the people you work with and you realize they're here because they're very, very good at what they do. And there's always a quotient of people you're there with because of who they know. And I think that's true in every business, and so you just try and hope that, I got a buddy at work who has an old saying, assholes are like splinters. They work their way out over time, and you're just hoping that you kind of get your team right, let things naturally sort themselves out. And that's the nice thing about Mom. We've been going a long time. We got a great crew and there's no dead weight.
Do you
when
feel
you get on a show, go ahead, Duffer. Go ahead, Duffer. I always cut you up anyway. So
you should listen to the advice he just gave there, okay?
I just wonder, like, when you're doing Netflix stuff, do you feel and appreciate and enjoy, have the boundaries widened as far as what you can do? And is that really, like, powerful for you?
It is wider. And I will say I consult on that show. Both these shows, I work for a man named Chuck Lorre, who is really the preeminent comedy creator of our generation. And it's been fascinating working. When you work for the best, it's an education. But yeah, it's great because, you don't have to check your language. You don't have to check situations and people's choices. You can do anything you want on Netflix. But, the other thing that is liberating is that you're not trying to necessarily do a show. It's like I've written big comedy movies, and what they're always talking about in those meetings, we want all 4 quadrants, and it's like, so you want children, you want old drunks, you want animals, you want, mythical creatures, you want everyone to go to the movie, and everyone on date night too, and their 3-year-old. It's insane, But when you go to the streamers and some of these other platforms, you can write for one audience, and it lets you laser focus and express a particular point of view in a different way. That's not necessarily better, but it's if you got that passion project, that's where you want to go with it.
Well, Nick, you talked about your crew earlier. So this is just a small part of the crew that works on game nights, that puts it on TV and whatnot. We have, guys in the control room, guys that handle camera, guys that love football, college basketball. We have degenerate gamblers. We have a bunch of different, characters. What is it like on set? Do you guys talk about, I know you're obviously a Bills fan, so do you guys talk about football? Do you do fantasy football, gamble a little bit? What's the chemistry like with that?
Well, our show skews very male-female balanced. But I will say Buffalo's own Bill Fichtner is in the cast of Mom, and he and I talk Buffalo sports constantly. And we're kind of an island that way. But when I worked on King of Queens, that was the gamblingest, most degenerate show I've ever been on. Everyone was betting sports, but also we would play gin for obscene amounts of money all day long. And in our writer's room, there were all these dry boards. We had to break stories and do all the production notes. And there was another dry board with everyone's name on 2 grids, and wherever your names intersected, that's who owed who how much money. At the end of the year, we would settle up and go to Vegas as a group, and it was there were staggering amounts of money. So, I've been around both worlds,
Love it. I love it. That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. Listen, back in those days, you'd be stuck there writing the damn things till 2 a.m. And a lot of times it's like, your boss was getting dumb network notes for 2 hours while you were just hanging out. So it led to lots of bad behavior, and it kind of kept you sane, right?
We need to send RJ out, spend some time with you.
I would love
He'd fit right
more.
in.
Nick,
Is there anyone that? No, go ahead.
No, go, Dan.
I was just going to ask. You've been doing this for a while, but is there anyone you haven't had a chance to work with yet? Be it same as on the Chuck Lorre side, or the acting side, or writer side, that you would like to sit down with and come up with something?
The first person that came to mind is Mike Judge. I just think he's brilliant. He's the guy who created, he was doing, boy, I'm spacing it, Silicon Valley on HBO, but he goes all the way to Beavis and Butthead. He's just a genius, and I've had some dealings with him over the years, but we never worked together. But I'm at that point now where, it's funny. I think if you're in the league long enough, you guys have played against everyone who's your contemporary. I've crossed paths with a lot of people. I used to work on talk shows, so I ran into a lot of people that way too. The main thing now is, it's always weird when you meet your heroes. Sometimes it's a disaster. Sometimes it's great. But, the main thing I like now is just people who are nice and aren't too crazy. That's all I ask.
Well, why don't you leave us with your favorite Buffalo sporting memory?
I'll tell you, for me, it's Sabre-centric, although, I love the Bills so much as well. But the first thing that came to mind, I hadn't thought about that question, was when the people in the Odd back in my day chanted, "Thank you, Sabres," at the end of the season. That, to me, is the quintessential moment with Buffalo's love of its teams and love of its athletes and the price they pay. It was not like we carried the cup home that year, but the fans were grateful. And I think that's what I love the most about that Buffalo attitude.
1973 on the heels of the playoff series with Montreal. Nick, great reliving all these memories, and we certainly look forward to your ongoing success in Hollywood. It's been a pleasure to watch.
This was really fun, guys. Anytime.
He's a funny guy. Great to have Nick on the show with us. So why don't we keep the humor train rolling here, because hockey is a game full of pranks pulled behind the scenes. Dan, what have you seen over the years?
Well, I've heard about a lot of pranks over the years, but I've not been witness to them. But on our last plane ride home this year, Razor was found out by someone on the team as he had played a prank, Rob, all season on this particular person.
Yeah, Georgie Babcock. Marty, it was one of those where you get the key. When you check in, all the keys are out there, so you can grab whoever's key. I always grab Georgie Babcock's. And I went to the room and turned the room all the time. And that means dumping the bed, putting all the furniture all over the place, tearing the TV down, unhooking everything. So when he gets in the room, nothing worked. I did it 8 straight trips, and he never caught on. And he just sat there. And then coming home on that flight from Montreal, they finally told George that it was me. He flipped out. We wrestled a little bit, but it was fun. But there's so many pranks, Marty, as you know, that go on. Just simple ones like spraying the toilet seat with Stickum. So you get there early in the morning, spray the toilet seat with Stickum. The guy sits on the toilet seat, and he's literally sticking his butt to the seat after he can't get up. Sewing the guy's pant legs or cutting the buttons off their shirts when you're not playing. Lindy Ruff did that one time in New York when he went to New York after he left the Sabres. He came in during the game. He wasn't playing. And he sewed all the guys' pants together and their pockets together. He was a busy guy during that game, but he ended up getting about 6 or 7 guys on that one little prank alone. So it was nonstop what went on.
You know why it's not right to do what you did to George Babcock? Because when
Why?
he lands into a visiting city, he's got to go to the rink. He's got to unpack the gear. He comes home at 3, 4 in the morning just to have his room destroyed, Razor. Like, that's not one that I can, vouch for. Now, I can tell you this. We picked on Brian Campbell one year in Florida where we had an agreement with the K-9 unit from the Sunrise Police Department.
Yep.
And they stopped the bus after a game. And poor Soupy had to go through his bag. And our trainers at the time put all the good drugs, the prescription pills and all of that in his bag. And Soupy was sweating it because he thought he was going to get arrested and thrown in jail after a win in Florida. Luckily, it was just a prank. But to Soupy's credit, he never gave out the source of the pills. He took it to his jail cell, basically. So to his credit, that was good.
Excellent stuff. The game is full of humor. Life needs to be full of humor, of course, in these trying times. We'll be back next week in the Royal Round. You'll see it on Sabres YouTube and Sabres.com.